My name is Shirley, and I'm a 31-year-old office worker. A year ago, I married Mason, a man I met through a blind date. After a year and a half of dating, he proposed, though it felt a bit rushed. I accepted. I'd always dreamt of settling down. Looking back, I wish I'd taken more time to consider what I was stepping into. Shortly after our wedding, Mason made an abrupt decision to switch jobs. When I asked why, he explained that his previous position hadn't allowed him to fully utilize his potential. What surprised me more was that he'd already resigned and would be leaving by the end of the month. While he managed to find another job quickly, it paid less than his previous one. At first, I wasn't too concerned since I had my own steady income, but soon after, Mason began urging me to quit my job. I might have entertained the idea if his new salary could cover our expenses, but with his recent pay cut and vague promises of future raises, it didn't seem practical. We relied on both our incomes to manage basic expenses like rent and car payments, and my quitting wasn't an option. One evening, Mason handed me divorce papers, as though to threaten me. "You know, I'm ready for this whenever," he said pointedly. I stayed calm and told him to think about what he was saying. He left the room without another word, but the incident left me deeply unsettled. Since then, I've stuck to my stance. I won't quit my job until his salary improves. Though he initially seemed to accept this, the topic kept coming up. Each time, I stood firm. Now, a year into our marriage, nothing has changed. His salary hasn't increased, and he continues to pressure me. "When are you going to quit?" he asks repeatedly. I've bitten back sarcastic retorts, knowing we can't afford for me to leave my job. If it matters so much to him, I feel he should focus on advancing his career first. Eventually, I started to piece together why Mason was so fixated on me quitting. During visits to his parents, the dynamic became clear. His mother, Martha, was a focal point of our conversations. Mason would make a show of concern for her, claiming he wanted to lighten her load. Martha, who was active, healthy, and still working part-time, didn't seem to need any help, yet Mason would look at me meaningfully, as if implying it was my duty to step in. One day, he suggested that I stay home so I could check on Mom daily. When I pressed him for specifics, his reasoning seemed flimsy. Martha didn't need a caretaker, she was independent and enjoyed a busy social life. I asked Mason what he expected me to do, and he listed tasks like helping with housework or running errands for her. It was baffling. Was he expecting me to become his mother's maid? Mason seemed more concerned about appearances than practicality. He wanted to look like the dutiful son in front of his parents, and I suspect he thought my quitting would reinforce that image. But I couldn't justify sacrificing my career for unnecessary errands. I was willing to help when needed, but abandoning my job for trivial reasons wasn't an option. "I don't understand," I told him one day. "Martha has her own job, and she's out with friends most days. Why do you think she needs me to help with chores?" His vague responses only solidified my resolve. If Mason wanted to ensure his parents' comfort, he could take on those responsibilities himself. Over time, I drew firm boundaries. I stopped visiting my in-laws on my days off, limiting visits to holidays like New Year's. Even then, Mason often tried to delegate tasks to me, tidying up, helping his mom, running errands. I resisted each time, refusing to fall into a role that didn't feel fair or necessary. When Mason suggested I go to the store, I would retort, "Don't you know this area better than I do?" His response was always the same: "It wouldn't look right if I did it myself." His reasoning struck me as both puzzling and manipulative. It became increasingly clear that he was less interested in genuine care for his parents or for me, and more focused on maintaining an image of control and familial responsibility. Over time, my perspective on Mason began to shift. It was becoming clear that appearances mattered more to him than affection or respect. Finally, I confronted him. "Why don't you step up and help your mother yourself? Or, if it's that important, why not quit your job to take care of her?" His reaction was telling. Disgusted and uncomfortable, he replied, "That's not my role. I give you these instructions so my mom will think you're a considerate, useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I'm being to you." His words were a revelation. Mason wasn't interested in partnership. He wanted me to shoulder all the burdens while he basked in the glow of perceived virtue. I was not his servant, nor would I allow myself to be disrespected in front of his family. It was clear that Mason's priorities were skewed, valuing appearances and control over equality and support. Despite my repeated refusals, Mason persisted with his unreasonable demands. Every visit to his parents' house was the same. He would boss me around, assigning chores or errands under the guise of helping his family. I finally reached my breaking point. We need to talk about our future, I said one evening, determined to address the growing strain in our marriage. Mason's irritation was immediate. What now? He snapped. I'm tired of you asking when I'll quit my job. I'm tired of you pressuring me to take care of your mom, I said, laying everything on the table. You're my wife. It's your duty to care for your husband's parents, he shot back. And you're their biological child. Isn't it your responsibility too? Or is it only my job, because I'm the wife? I challenged. His face twisted with frustration. That's how it's supposed to be. Are you saying you don't care about family? You're so selfish. I pushed further. If you're so insistent that I take care of your parents, would you do the same for mine? Would you quit your job to care for them if I asked? Mason stared at me blankly, unable, or unwilling, to grasp the hypocrisy. Why should I take care of your parents? That's different. How is it different? Family is family, or does that only apply to yours? I countered, my patience running thin. His arguments grew weaker, but his temper flared. Enough, my mom is right about you. You're an ungrateful wife. He stormed off, returning moments later with a piece of paper. These are divorce papers, he said smugly. I'm ready anytime you are. Think about that before you talk back again. It was clear the papers were meant to intimidate me, but instead, they solidified my resolve. Mason's actions, manipulative, selfish, and orchestrated by his mother, made it evident that our marriage was failing. The next day, while Mason was at work, I took the signed divorce papers to the city office. As a precaution, I also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate to prevent him from reapplying without my consent. I called my parents to explain the situation, knowing Mason might retaliate. They were shocked, but fully supportive, and they immediately offered to help me move. Taking a leave from work, I packed my belongings and relocated to my parents' house while Mason was away. For the first time in a long while, I felt at ease. Reflecting on our marriage, I realized just how one-sided it had been. I had been the one managing the household, cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry, even after long days at work. Mason contributed little and expected me to do even more by taking care of his parents. Now, away from Mason's controlling presence, I finally felt free to rebuild my life. The experience taught me an important lesson. A partnership requires mutual respect and shared responsibilities. Without those, a marriage becomes little more than a cage. That evening, Mason called me, his voice sharp and impatient. Hello? Hey, where are you right now? He demanded. I'm at my parents' house, I replied calmly. Why would you go back there without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying the night, he said, a mix of disbelief and entitlement lacing his words. I almost laughed at how oblivious he was. He seemed to think this was a minor disagreement and that I'd be back by morning. I'm not coming back, I said firmly. What are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food, he ordered. Make it yourself, I retorted, ending the call. His dismissive attitude left no room for discussion. I blocked his number, deciding to let him stew in his own arrogance. A week later, Mason showed up at my parents' home, accompanied by his mother, Martha, and father, Liam. Their faces were tense as they joined my parents and me in the living room. How could you do this? How could you leave without my permission? Mason barked, his voice full of accusation. You were treating me like a housekeeper, Mason. All I ever asked was for you to take responsibility for your own family, I replied calmly, refusing to back down. That's not true. What kind of wife am I if I don't take care of Mason? Martha interjected with a fierce glare. My father's face flushed with anger, but I quickly intervened. Mason insisted I quit my job and care for Martha, claiming it was my duty as his wife. Yet, when it came to my own family, he expected me to handle everything alone. He wanted obedience, not a partnership, I explained, meeting Martha's glare with unwavering resolve. Have you actually heard Mason say these things? I asked Martha directly. She glowered at me in silence, but Liam looked perplexed, clearly unaware of the full story. Let's clear this up, Mason interrupted, pulling out the divorce papers he'd threatened me with earlier. This was all Martha's idea, he added, trying to deflect blame. What? Why would you suggest that? Liam asked, visibly shocked. Oh, it's because Camila has an attitude problem, Martha stammered defensively. And did you really say that Camila's parents aren't a priority? I pressed. Well, it's natural that the husband's parents come first, Martha replied, her voice dripping with indignation. That's absurd, Liam exclaimed. I came here to support you, but it seems you're the one at fault. Stop hiding behind this outdated nonsense. Turning to Mason, Liam's tone hardened. You mean to tell me you used divorce papers as a threat? Before Mason could respond, I interjected, actually, I've already filed them. We're no longer married. Mason and Martha both went pale. What? How could you file them without my permission? Mason stammered. You told me I could file them anytime, remember? You even had Martha sign as a witness, I said coolly. Liam, his face red with fury, slapped Mason across the face. How dare you treat your wife like this? He bellowed. Martha flinched as Liam turned to her. And you encouraged this? Unbelievable. Liam turned to me and my parents, bowing slightly. I'm truly sorry for the trouble my son and wife have caused. Camila, you deserve far better. Aftermath. True to his word, Liam followed up with action. He helped ensure a smooth division of assets, transferring everything Mason and I shared into my name, acknowledging my higher income and contributions to the household. Not long after, I learned that Liam had filed for divorce from Martha, disgusted by her manipulations. Mason, meanwhile, floundered. A former colleague of his told me that Mason had been struggling at work for years, often criticized for poor performance. Instead of improving, he quit in defiance and took a lower-paying job, further highlighting his inability to take responsibility. Moving forward, I've since moved into a cozy apartment and am loving my independence. Work is going well, and I even earned a recent promotion. For now, I'm focusing on my career and enjoying the peace that comes with being on my own. Mason cared more about appearances than substance, both in our marriage and in his career. Using divorce as a threat was his biggest mistake, one that backfired spectacularly. I hope he learns from this, though I doubt it will be easy for him. As for me, I'm finally free. When I'm ready, I'll welcome the opportunity to build a meaningful relationship, but only with someone who values respect, equality, and partnership. Until then, I'm embracing the life I've reclaimed, one day at a time.